Hi, welcome to Inside the Lines. I'm Lizzie Arbogast alongside Scott Hardy, and we are back to talk about yet another week of football. I don't even know what week we're in anymore. 5?
Is it week 5 now? Yeah.
6?
Week 5.
I don't know. Week 0 confuses me now.
Yeah, it's week 5 now.
Oh, it could be week 6.
I think it's the 6th week, but
Yes.
it's technically week 5.
Yes.
Right. Okay. First of all, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Rodney and Langley Funeral Homes, Alex City Marine, and Dark Insurance Agency. Glad that you are with us as always. We are going to kick it off with our game of the week, which is Holtville at Horseshoe Bend. I'm sorry. I had to say I'm proud of myself because back in July, I couldn't say Holtville. I wanted to say Holtville because that's proper Pennsylvania speak.
I don't know if it's proper or not, but we're trying to get you engulfed here.
It's
in
proper
the
Southern
vernacular.
speak
Yeah,
to say
it's-
Holtville.
yeah, yes.
Okay, so obviously this is a big game just because Horseshoe Bend former coach Jason Franklin returns to the Generals. He is now a coach at Holtville, and so obviously this is kind of what's going to happen. He knows that team so well. Holtville is winless currently, but I just think they might be an advantage this week because he coached. They've got 22 seniors, and he coached all of them for years.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is one of the games to watch for Horseshoe Bend, and clearly with the mindset of what you would have for a returning coach, you want to get excited. So the storyline there really is a former coach who really set this team up to be successful prior to him leaving and got them to a playoff berth. Now leaves and goes to Hopeful, who was winless. But they were 1-9 last year. They did beat Beulah the last game of the season, but 0-4 to start the season now. So it's been tough sledding for Hopeful. But Horseshoe Bend needed the win last week versus Rammer to get back on the right track on things, especially to stay competitive in the playoff competition that they're in right now, trying to get that 3rd or 4th seed. Now bringing in Hopeful, this will be another opportunity for them to keep things rolling and get a W in the column.
Right, for sure. And even though it's a non-region team, I think I talked to Coach Averett, and they've got Lafayette up next after Holtville, which is probably the second best team in their region. So he kind of wants to, get on a little win streak, take that momentum into Lafayette to possibly, pull an upset there.
Yeah, and again, it's been a roller coaster of a season for Horseshoe Bend. They've played really well at times and poorly at other times, but I think that really what Coach Everett is looking for is a complete game, and this will be the opportunity to do so, especially with the onslaught of games that they have coming up to finish up region play. So from a momentum standpoint, and just to get the mindset again back to where it needs to be and being competitive, I think this is what you're looking for. And again, when you bring in a former coach, emotions can be high, and especially with somebody again who is so integral in getting the team set up that way. But we'll see what happens. But I think it'll be a good game for the Generals to get back again successful especially offensively.
Yeah, for sure. And I would kind of expect maybe a high scoring game. They played Dadeville obviously beat them last week, but I think it was like 48-24, 25. So I think Holtville can score some points, as can Horseshoe Bend. So we might be in a shootout kind of situation.
And it's homecoming week as well. So that'll be. You always wonder how that plays out as a coach because there's more distractions, and as we lead into this next game, I know that the head coach for another team in the area who has homecoming doesn't necessarily like all the outside parts of it because it is a distraction from football. But we should have a good game in New Site this week.
And what obviously could have been our game of the week this week, Benjamin Russell hosts Oxford. Oxford ranked 3rd in the state. Benjamin Russell now ranked 9th in the state. This is what I'm calling the battle of the unbeaten. Neither team has lost yet this year, and I think it's going to be another great game for Benjamin Russell.
Yeah, I think as a Wildcat fan, if you're looking at this Benjamin Russell team, they steadily progressed each week, and that was something Coach Horn talked about to begin the season. Just wanted to see that the players got better each week, and to beat a team that you've only beaten twice in 16 years, rather, and then one time since Danny's been here. That was a big win. So from a momentum standpoint and just from a confidence level, I think this was good for those seniors who had never beaten Opelika. But again, how did they respond from such a emotional victory? But they were up 19-0, and then the punt return, and then the long touchdown there. So they almost let it slip. So you want to see how they respond, especially with a team as good as Oxford, as you said, ranked top 3 in the state in 6A. So they'll need another dominant performance from the Wildcat defense.
The one thing I do think is going in Benjamin Russell's favor, despite the rankings, is that actually Benjamin Russell's played a much tougher schedule than Oxford had. Oxford's best competition was probably Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa, which they did shut out. But I think that in terms of they've played this really tough schedule so far, that maybe they're a little bit more battle tested than Oxford is at this point in the season.
Yeah, and it's just something about this senior class. Last year's team, and I hope nobody takes offense to this, but I thought last year's team was probably more talented than this team. But individually they were. But as a whole, this group has a team concept to it, and nobody wants to outshine the other. Anything they can do to help the other make the play or to keep them up is what you see. And so being on the sidelines each week, two of our favorite players we always talk about defensively, Jaden Tuck and Benjamin Hendricks, they kind of get things solidified to start the game.
Jaden Tuck was on point last week.
Now, the first half against
Opelika
was one of the best halves of football we've seen from a defensive player in quite some time. And so they started going away from him. So that's the only reason this plays is his calculated total wasn't as high as it could have been. But A.J. Thompson and Pokey Norris and those guys from the front and the back, I think they'll need a complete team effort. And again, defensively, we won't give it away, but I do think Brett Pitts will be somebody that I think emerges as a integral figure. He's been stepping up each week, but I think this could be a game where people really start to notice him even more than what they have been.
And I think we've talked so much about Benjamin Russell's defense. When I talked to Coach Warren earlier today, they haven't been scoring that many points, but what he said was they've been very opportunistic. When they have a chance to score, they had those two big field goals early in the first half, against Opelika. That really, you look at it as a 5-point game in the end. That makes a big difference, those first 6 points. And so they've been able to kind of take advantage of chances when they have them, especially against these really good teams. That's kind of what you have to do.
Yeah, and, the players have heard it, and there's been talk around the state, how good was Opelika and all this and that. They beat a top 5 team in the state, and it's Opelika, and it's your rival, and it's a team you haven't beaten. So clearly that was a major win for them.
For sure.
So I think that, again, this senior class has some motivation behind it, and they know what the scores have been in previous years, so they don't want to have that replicated. So I anticipate another strong performance defensively, and kind of parlaying what you're saying there for offense. I think that this will be a game, again, where points will be at a premium. So I just talking about the opportunistic. Yeah, you'll have to get them when you can.
For sure. Moving over to Dadeville, they're hosting Valley. It's actually, I just realized that all of our teams are in non-region play this week. But again, I talked to Coach White, and he said it doesn't necessarily matter that it's non-region, especially that Valley's a 5A school. With that tough region that Dadeville's in, if it comes down to a tiebreak situation, beating a 5A school carries more weight than beating a 4A or 3A school. So I think that Valley is a team that they can definitely beat. They're 1-3, 1-4. They do seem to be better than they have been in years past, according to Coach White. But I think that Dadeville, they had such a great game last week. They had 550 yards of offense. They had to kind of keep that going for sure.
Yeah, and I love when coaches say that. That's such coach speak. And not to say that they aren't better, but everybody's going to say, they're better than they were last year. They're better. And so that part of that is a mental game with the players themselves to not get psyched out and not to look at the record. But after last week's performance against Hopeful, I think that there's a new spirit there for the offense, especially with Coach Kyle Caldwell, the offensive coordinator. I think he's finally starting to get some of his players accustomed to what he's wanting to do offensively, because they've had a shift from last year to this year. But when you have two studs like they have offensively, it's going to be tough to stop them.
Yeah, and I loved what Coach White told me Caldwell's nickname for Quay Tucker and Kadori Glenn is Thunder and Lightning. Quay Tucker is that lightning speed guy. Kadori Glenn is that kind of more bruising running back. But they combined together are quite the force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and again, just off of the success of last week's game against Hopeful, similar opponent in Valley, maybe not in terms of just the athleticism there, but they'll be a little more athletic. But I think in terms of how they'll be able to move the ball offensively, this should be another dominating performance for the Tigers.
Lastly, we have Thorsby at Central Coosa. Central Coosa is they're seriously just struggling with numbers. I did talk to Coach Shane Rary, and he said they tried some things differently against Beulah. They tried to play more players, some younger guys, to be able to stretch out the depth that they have, if you can call it that, and that didn't work. They were putting 9th graders out there who had never played football before, and so I think they're going to go back to some of what we saw the week prior to that against PCA. Thorsby's undefeated though, so.
It's going to be another tough week for the Cougars, but I really at this point it's getting tough to see because there's so much effort being put into each week, and so obviously when you're limited, you have to be as creative as possible. And I did like what they were trying to do there,
Right,
but
you try something.
Yeah, you have to try something. But I think it's one of those things where if you're really looking at, they've been competitive early in all the games, so that lets you know that they, with a full roster of players, they would. Some of these L's would be W's, but when you have to play against 70, 80 plays a game,
Right.
there's no way you're going to be able to stay as upbeat as you would like to be. And when things go down, it's like, oh, it's happening again. So just want something positive to happen for the program. So as long as they can stay competitive, again, we talked about this during our Inside the Lines live show. I was like, I had 3 things for them. Don't quit, stay competitive, don't quit.
Right, don't quit.
So I think if they're able to do that, I think that the fans will be supportive of that, and I think that's all that Coach Shane Rear could ask for.
Yeah, and I think one big thing we talked about is if they could just get a lead. They've yet to lead in any game this year, and if they could just get a lead, I think that mentality, I mean, it's such a mental thing right now to get over these humps, and when you're getting beaten 46-0, it's tough to, want to come out and play. But if you get an early lead, a quick touchdown, something to sort of say, hey, we could do this, we could play with them, I think that maybe we'll see a big turnaround, or we could see a turnaround for them.
And something, one of the guest hosts we've had, Coach Jeff Hines, talked about, you'd see a progression, kind of like what we talked about with Benjamin Russell each week. And they are getting better. And this is good that they are having some of these young guys play. So at least they're setting a foundation coming up for the future. So that's the positive in this. So again, just from our perspective, it's good to see that the kids haven't quit, and it's good to see that Coach Shane Rear is still putting in the effort. Like he had a 6-0 team or 4-0 team, right? So it's good to see that that's happening. For
sure. Reeltown is on a bye this week, so we are going to skip right over to our Dark Horse Players of the Week, sponsored by Dark Insurance Agency, and I'm going to kick it off this week. I'm going to go with Levante Robinson, who is in the Horseshoe Bend secondary. I heard that Hopeville passes the ball a lot, and one of Horseshoe Bend's biggest strength this year has actually been their secondary defense. They had 5 interceptions one week. They had 2 last week against Ranburn. Levante had 3 in one game. I think it was Donahoe, but still, that's really impressive. And so I think that, if he can stay as kind of up as he's been so far, they can stop that pass, but they have a much better shot against Hopeville.
Well, we're going to make it back-to-back weeks where I get to pick a Wildcat, and it is homecoming week, so we'll try to keep it in theme. I know this isn't necessarily a dark horse player, but I think from a numbers perspective, Landon Cottney will put up some numbers, and I think we haven't seen thus far. And so they have been throwing the ball a little bit more, especially early on in games and early on in downs. So it's good to see that. But I think Landon Cottney will get some of his playmakers involved. Nick McGee, Zay Stows, David Herring coming out of the backfield, as well as Tyler White. So I think this will be a good game for Landon Cottney. And I do want to say one thing, too. Shout out to the Benjamin Russell student section for joining us last Friday. I haven't had the chance to speak to any of those guys since Friday, but that was a lot of fun.
My ears are still ringing.
Yes, that was a lot of fun, and so I appreciate their support there, and hopefully they'll have another big week this Friday.
All right, and we are going to wrap it up there, but we are going to be live on Friday night from Inside the Lines Live. We're actually going to go to Horseshoe Bend. We're going to start a little bit early this week because they have homecoming. So they're going to have their homecoming festivities, so we'll be on at 5:45 to 6:15 on the Alex City Outlook Facebook. Once again, we want to thank our sponsors, Radney and Langley Funeral Homes, as well as Alex City Marine and Dark Insurance Agency. Thanks again for joining us.